This is Danger, and welcome to This Week in DeFi, the podcast where we go over the coolest market-moving news from last week. So last week in DeFi, a lot of stuff happened. You can find out all the details in our newsletter, Last Week in DeFi. It's at todayindefi.com. But for the purposes of this podcast, we're just going to cover the really big and interesting news that has been moving the market. So the first story that we're going to talk about is Bullet. So Bullet is a new perps exchange from Zeta Markets. Zeta Markets is a perps exchange on Solana, and now they're building something that's like supposed to be much, much faster than anything else out there. So it's kind of like the HyperLiquid on Solana, but even faster, at least according to their claims. So they're saying they're going to have 2 millisecond execution speed, which is actually faster than centralized exchanges. So yeah, they just launched their testnet, and let's look at how this is supposed to work. So they have ZK VM. So just like ZK rollups, they're using zero-knowledge proofs to compress transactions to kind of like roll them up to settle a ton of transactions in a single 400 millisecond Solana block. And they're also working as a network extension, which is sort of like a Solana version of a layer 2 on Ethereum, but it's on Solana. And network extensions are a little bit more closely integrated with Solana. So they actually have reserved block space in Solana. So each Solana block has like a portion of the block reserved for these network extensions, kind of like having a priority there. And that's part of why they're able to be this fast. So it's pretty interesting tech, and it is on testnet right now. I tried it out. It definitely feels quite fast. So I've created an account here. You can create an account easily with Phantom. They say you can also do that with other stuff like Google or whatever, because they're using Privy. I was not able to do it at this time. Maybe they'll have it when they come to mainnet. But yeah, you can sort of see like here I've adjusted my leverage to 15x. And then I'm going to just like K of Solana filled super fast. And now I'm going to sell it. Filled super fast again. So at least in theory, it seems like it's working quite fast. It is only on testnet, so like you can't even like deposit stuff. So it's a little bit hard to tell how this will perform in the real world, because right now it doesn't have to compete with any mainnet traffic. But yeah, at least on paper, this is really, really cool stuff. The second story, which is interesting, is that Compound, they had like this controversial proposal to launch on Polygon and using Morpho in the background, and they finally did that. So this proposal came out early in February, past the snapshot and tally, and now it's actually live. So you can actually go to Compound Blue. For some reason, they've actually put it on a different site. I'm not sure if it's a technical reason, but you go to Compound Blue, and then you have this familiar Compound interface, but the backend is actually Morpho. So when you lend your ETH or USD or USDT here, a Morpho is actually powering the backend. And to me, this is like kind of weird, because Compound was the original like DeFi lending protocol. There was obviously like there was an ETH lend before that, but like Compound was the first one that pioneered pooled lending, and it was a really good product. They also pioneered yield farming, like with the Comp token. And it was just a really cool protocol, and to see them start using another lending protocol on the back end is like very disconcerting, because like in the short term, I think this makes a lot of sense, or this makes some sense. It certainly makes literal sense because, you know, Compound, you can see some of the logic here, but the reasoning is that Compound V3 hasn't been updated in a while, and it seems like the core tech team may not be that active, or if they're there at all. And Compound's market share is declining, and this partnership with Morpho, which is a fast-growing lending protocol on the back end, will help boost their TVL, boost their growth, and that sort of makes sense. So Gauntlet is curating this. Morpho has been doing really well, and cool thing, another reason they're citing here is that there's some governance problems with Compound, where its governance minimized, so that gives a little bit more power to like curators and stuff. Like Gauntlet or whoever before, they might need to pass governance proposals just to list assets, but here they can do it more permissionlessly, more quickly, and adjust to the market more more quickly, more dynamically. Sort of makes sense because Morpho has been doing super well, in part through their partnership with Gauntlet. But then, this is obviously good for Gauntlet, which gets fees. It's obviously good for Morpho, which gets more TVL. It's even potentially good for Polygon because there is this side chain which has been kind of like decreasing in mindshare and TVL. But for Compound, is it good? It's hard to say. Like in the short term, it's definitely good because they'll get more TVL. This is like a pretty good APR for these assets. But long term, like if you're using another lending protocol on the back end, it's like, why would people even use you in the first place then? It is a nice interface, like Compound V3, and Compound in general has always had a really good UX. But to use another protocol on the back end is just like, in my opinion, like mid to long term, it's kind of like a death knell of a protocol. So I hope Compound uses these profits to kickstart its development again and also find a way to kickstart its governance. One of the reasons this passed is because governance doesn't have really active governors outside of like a few major players who have, potential interests outside of just Compound. But like, yeah, if they get these funds, I would like to see them address longer term issues, which are that, the Compound development team is not that active. There needs to be like some serious development, some people motivated to keep on developing on Compound, and also like good governance. I'm not saying Gauntlet is like a bad governor. I mean, this is good for them, obviously, also potentially good for Compound in the short term, but they do have their own, biases because they're working closely with Morpho. It would be cool to see more other governors as well who are actively, monitoring the situation, doing what's best for Compound. So yeah, that's this week in DeFi. I would say that so you can definitely use this. There's like pretty good. I would say there's actually pretty good APR here. This is fueled by Compound and also Polygon tokens, and I think also even some Morpho tokens in some. I guess not for now, but I think the borrow rates are also pretty attractive. So it is certainly a decent market to lend and borrow from. But I will also point out that Compound V3 is already actually quite a good project. So Compound V3, in my opinion, it's a little bit underestimated. Like they actually did a lot of upgrades from V2. So like V2 was kind of like a more basic version of what Aave is now. But V3, because it was the first version of pooled lending, basically. But V3, they introduced like kind of like I wouldn't say totally isolated, but these like markets, somewhat isolated markets. So the risk is kind of isolated, but also these markets. The cool thing is that they have a single lending collateral, and what that does is that it decreases the borrow APR and it boosts the lending APR, if that makes sense. Like you have a bunch of collateral you can borrow against, and then you have one asset that you can borrow. So like it means that, yeah, so like I said, it boosts the lending APR and it decreases the borrow APR, which is like good for everyone, which sounds impossible, but in this case, it works. And the UI is like amazing. I'm not going to show it now because I don't want to dox my wallet, but you can like bundle transactions. It shows everything super clearly. It kind of simulates the transaction in advance so you can see what's happening. And yeah, you can use it through Compound directly, or you can use it through our sponsor DeFi Saver. This lets you, see, also has a really great UI, and it lets you bundle transactions, but also do some automation to protect yourself from liquidations and stuff, or even build leverage. So yeah, I do encourage you to not only use, also to check out Compound V3 in general. It's just actually a pretty decent place to lend and borrow. So yeah, that's what this week in DeFi. Consider liking and subscribing to us, and consider also supporting our sponsor DeFi Saver. They're a really good way to use Compound and yeah, see you next week.